Hey everyone, welcome back to their hardware news recap for the week. In this one, we have a ton of news from the past couple weeks, including a huge announcement about the future of this channel. Additionally, a new motherboard standard where they're trying to send all the power for the whole computer, basically, through 50 pins on the back of the motherboard. We'll see how that works out with 12-volt high power stuff in the past. Intel has announced that Arc isn't dead. It's a thing you announce now. Alienware making some actually huge and possibly exciting changes to a line we've long had problems with. Looking forward to seeing how that works out, and plenty more. Let's get into it. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Antec C8 cases. We reviewed the Antec C8 ARGB a few months ago and found it to be an overall competitive performer using unique 160mm fans. There's also a version without included fans, and it's competitively priced while still offering attention to detail key elements like the airflow partition for better directing air intake. It also has high-quality kill management grommets and limited obstructions for bottom air intake. The ARGB variant includes all these features, but also two 160mm reverse blade fans and one 140mm fan. Learn more at the link in the description below. Okay, first up, if you're here because you want to see what we think about the recent WAN show discussion, this won't be it. It's become increasingly clear that people don't want a back and forth drama to play out on this channel. We still have to address it in some way, so we wrote a post addressing it, and that includes their inaccuracies and their demands for evidence. So we've provided that, we've linked it below, it's there if you want it. Additionally, I've emailed both Linus and Luke being head of the labs, and I've offered to meet up with them privately at Computex on Friday at the show. That'll be in May. It's become clear that we've created a rift in the audience where as our investigative series has ramped up, there's a clear divide among viewers. And so some of you are here for the hardware reviews, which is what this channel was built on, and that's not changing. We're going to keep doing that, of course. Some of you are here for a specific focus on consumer advocacy, consumer rights, and that includes investigations. Now, the challenge is when we do these investigations and call out behavior that we find to be problematic and dive deep into those issues, the people who are here really only for the hardware reviews, they want us to just shut up and get back to the hardware reviews, which I totally get. And then on the other side, the people who are here for those investigations and the consumer advocacy focus and may not even be hardware enthusiasts, they are sort of maybe disappointed waiting for when that style of content will return as they wait through a period of us uploading case reviews and GPU reviews and things like that. So, and I also get that, by the way. Now, our core channel has been centered primarily around hardware, and we're noticing that rift in our audience with those two content types that have been emerging. But the truth is, we care about both. I want to do both. And what we've seen with this situation and others is that this channel isn't the place for investigations anymore. So we're launching a new GNCA investigations channel. It's GN, Gamers Nexus Consumer Advocacy, and that's where we're going to cover all of our consumer protection and consumer advocacy content. That'll be over there. That doesn't stop these topics overall from making appearances here, like in hardware news or as it relates to a computer hardware component we're reviewing, or maybe they have some kind of policy that's not good for consumers. But it does separate the investigations and allows us to provide focused and relevant content to the sort of two different audiences, even though there's overlap, and that gets spread between both channels. The new channel will include podcasts where I plan to get Louis Rossmann, Wendell from Level 1 Techs, consumer rights attorney Vincent Augusta, Der Bauer, and other consumer advocates on. It'll also feature large investigative pieces like the videos we've made in the past on EK, Honey, NZXT, Asus, Artesian builds, or whatever other consumer rights issues that interest me, and also smaller commentary on consumer-specific issues. So a couple things. This allows us to potentially expand the scope a little bit and do things outside of computer hardware on that channel, and then on this channel, we keep that reviews focus with the consumer first approach to it. So that's not changing. It's the same as it's been. But we're going to split those two topics up. So if you're interested in the investigations and that coverage, you can go subscribe to the GNCA channel. And if you just want computer hardware, then stick around here. Now, that means that the topics that feel out of place on Gamers Nexus will be moving over to GNCA. And so because Gamers Nexus will be focusing on computer hardware, this is going to be the last time we're covering Linus Tech Tips or any topics relating to that on this channel. It doesn't preclude them from coverage at all, so that would go to GNCA. But this channel will remain focused on computer hardware and components and reviews. which I think is just about time we split that stuff up. And this is not a main channel, side channel situation. These are going to be basically two different main channels, just with different focuses. And I'm excited about the opportunity to just kind of split it. So we'll post a video to GNCA introducing the channel later this week, including our first series with Vincent Augusta, the attorney who's joined us in the past, to speak about how you can exercise consumer rights you might not know you have. So if all of that interests you, check the link in the description below for the new channel. And then as for what we're doing here for the next week, we have a huge amount of reviews coming up. So the RTX 50 series is coming up, as you all know. I'm actually really excited about the benchmarking. I can't talk a lot about what we're doing yet, just because it's embargoed still. What I can say is there's some really cool stuff and exploratory testing we're doing, and the Schlieren imaging setup has come back. So check back for that. All right, so that's the update. Let's get into the first news item. Up now, Nintendo posted its Switch 2 announcement. It's very simple. The trailer did not get into any technical details at this time. It did show some changes visually between old and new. That was about it. But the Switch 2 trailer may be in response to the recent slew of leaks, but it answered some basic questions. It shows that the two detachable controllers remain. The device has gotten a little bit bigger, but its overall concept remains the same. The video shows a new trigger on the backside of the controller that seems to correspond with the action to disconnect it from the base device. Nintendo shows clips of the controllers detaching to be used either separately or reconnected as a single controller with the bridge, just like you can do now on the current Switch iterations. And it shows the docking station for use with TV Play, although feasibly you can just plug in a USB cable to it now since they've got multiple of those. The device appears to have a mouse sensor on each controller. We're not 100% sure about that, but the video illustrates them sliding on the surface at one point. It shows what looks like a sensor. Either way, maybe it's a new form of input tracking for the Switch 2. The trailer makes clear that the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible. It also promises more detail at a Nintendo Direct event on April 2nd this year, narrowly avoiding April 1st, which, as we all know, instantly makes all announcements non-real and just a joke. Nintendo also noted that it will have a Switch 2 experience session across the world with its blog listing dates and places for hands-on trial by the community. And we'll probably try to buy one to do a teardown. We did one of the original Switch. I was still back at the house for the videos back then. So we'll probably try and get another one and do another teardown. This one is about the BTF standard. It's kind of interesting. According to a Taiwanese publication, Unico's Hardware, DIY-APE, not sure if that's supposed to be pronounced or not, has developed a new BTF 3.0 standard. BTF stands for Back to Future, and it aims to eliminate the need for most power supply cable. Now, BTF has been a big part of the conversation over the last couple of years now, where you've seen a lot of cases and motherboards support this idea of back connect. It's kind of a scattered, I don't know if you can call it a standard yet, but scattered approach. Everyone's got things in slightly different areas. But this is a continuation of that, where now they are also trying to kill the need for 24-pin ATX and for 4 or 8-pin EPS 12-volt and for PCIe connections to the GPU. Instead, BTF 3.0 uses a single back connect 50-pin power connector. Citing a Bilibili video from DIY-APE, the group developing the standard, Unico's Hardware highlighted a setup that includes a specialized power supply and a Z890 motherboard. According to the publication, the current implementation is capable of supporting up to 1,500 watts. One benefit to this design is that it would allow for cleaner builds. Major downsides are probably obvious for most of you. Now, first, the GPU suddenly has a new compatibility requirement with the motherboards, where now it depends on the board itself, meaning that if the motherboard and the video card become sort of codependent, I guess, and dependent on cross-compatibility rather than just the existence of a PCIe slot, you now have scenarios where it would be possible, in theory, to buy a motherboard which cannot support the power requirement of, say, an upgraded GPU in the slot or something like that. So right now, this whole thing's just an experiment. If it were to come to fruition, then we can worry more about the downsides then, but there's a lot of them. There's a ton more signaling and power running through the board, first of all. That's going to add a massive amount of cost to motherboards if it were to actually go anywhere, and that would skyrocket motherboard cost. You'd pay less in cables, I guess, but even if cynically, it seems like it is rarely the case where it gets cheaper when something like this changes. So anyway, The team behind it was able to hide all cabling with the exception of front panel connectors, accessories, RGB LED cables, and fans. The whole thing also reminds us of when 24-pin power connectors would burn out on SLI systems that used multiple video cards years ago. Up next, in some news here, Intel's keynote at CES, which it did have, and apparently people even watched, had Intel co-CEO Michelle Johnston Holthaus making some statements about Arc.
We're also upping our game in graphics, and most recently, we launched Intel Arc B Series graphics card, also known to many of you as Battlemage. When we first announced our plans to enter the discrete graphics market, you all had a lot of feedback. Many of you told me that we would never compete, and I won't say that it's been easy, and we've certainly come a long way. We got a lot of feedback on that first generation of Arc's graphics card. We are very committed to the discrete graphics market, and we will continue to make strategic investments in this direction.
Intel's renewed commitment here comes less than 3 months after former Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger announced in a Q3 2024 earnings call that there would be, quote, less need for discrete graphics in the market going forward, end quote. So this is obviously a hugely contradicting comment released in a similar time period to what Intel just said on stage, with really 2 major events separating them. One is the changeover of CEOs, where Pat Gelsinger is no longer at Intel, and the other is the launch of Battlemage. Up next, Alienware desktop PCs are undergoing a huge change. Finally! Alienware's desktop systems are probably most known for using lots of proprietary parts. We've taken them apart over the years. It's been our primary complaint. It makes upgrading them difficult, and it's really the centerpiece of the Alienware coverage, where because of the proprietary nature of the parts, they become more or less non-replaceable components, at least without other Alienware components if they keep making them. And it relegates the entire system to functionally being e-waste as soon as stuff starts breaking, which has always been terrible, especially because all this could easily be standardized. It's not like it's some special ultra small form factor, so it was kind of a pointless reason for it to be proprietary to begin with. But after decades, actually, of Alienware building computers like this, they are changing. Alienware recently emailed us a press release stating that the company is turning a new leaf, writing that their new 80-liter tower will use, quote, standard components in a scalable design, end quote. The company is also, interestingly, adding QR codes around the system. They wrote this, quote, upgradability is an integral part of the Area 51 customer experience. QR codes found inside the chassis guide customers to instructional videos on how to complete updates, repairs, and modifications of key components. This includes guides on how to change the RAM, GPU, SSD, power supply, and conduct basic maintenance like cleaning filters and fans. The motherboard is also replaceable with the purchase of an optional Alien FX board conversion kit that is required when installing third-party aftermarket boards. And that part's not great, like needing to buy a thing to do what should just be standardized. But anyway, we'll look at that once we get them in. On paper, broadly speaking, this is an appreciated change. This is a direction Alienware needs to go. We don't know if it's good yet. We're going to buy one and check. But it'll already be a big deal just to move to ATX and micro ATX, which they say they're doing, rather than whatever the this is. They put all of the USB and front panel stuff on the motherboard and ran it through the front panel, and then they still ran a wire to the front panel anyway for LEDs. Good. Look at all this. Look at all that flux and just runoff. Front I/O attached to the board. Like this, for $5,000, this is your motherboard. You can hear the quality in the same way that you can hear the quality in a 1990s McDonald's Happy Meal toy. Can you hear the Ronald McDonald in the motherboard? So we're looking forward to evaluating this, be a big quality of life improvement. In addition to reportedly moving to more standardized parts, Alienware says it's designing the system to utilize a positive pressure airflow, having all of its fans pointing inward. Alienware told PC Gamer that its design negates the need for a rear exhaust fan. Downsides to this are that the dust will enter everywhere there's a fan, and there's going to be a lot of places for it to enter and accumulate. Upsides are that it pretty much just only enters there as long as they control where the air is moving, which they're trying to do with some gaskets, they say. Alienware's announcement video skipped over their worst series of desktops when listing their iterations. That was kind of weird. It's probably for the best, though. Alienware's thermal engineer noted this.
Our initial discussions surrounding the Area 51 started in the beginning of 2021.
That would be around when we posted our video titled, quote, hilariously bad Alienware R10 Ryzen PC, which was, in fact, hilariously bad. Alienware noted that their main obstacles for the new system included balancing silence and thermals. The video states that the positive pressure system uses 3 fan sizes and gaskets to, quote, prevent leakage. Alienware uses 2 140mm fans in the shroud for the GPU, 2 180s in the front. This is actually really interesting for the rest of the case cooling, and it couples a gigantic plastic cover with a fan size that often struggles with static pressure performance. So we're not sure about that decision. There are these gaps on the sides, but this is the trap we saw Cooler Master fall into with its H500P series years ago before they corrected it. We're putting a giant sheet of plastic, even with an inch or 2 gap to the fans. Larger fans typically struggle more with static pressure performance. I mean, that's not a great thing to do with any size fan, but especially like a 180, at least it's not a 200. But anyway, there's still some things we're seeing that even without buying it yet, kind of know where our main complaints are going to be, but we'll see how it performs in testing. In terms of upgradability, the system supports GPUs, they say, up to 4 slots thick. It has compatibility for M-ATX and ATX, and then it also supports 6 storage drives, and the PC, unfortunately, will utilize Intel's Arrow Lake platform, and it can be outfitted with RAM options from 16 to 64 gigabytes. System will offer different power supplies as well, ranging from 850 watts gold rated with the 80 plus gold rating up to a 1500 watt platinum power supply. Now, Alienware had actually previously messaged us. They sent an email and asked if we'd like to be a part of this launch, get the information early, all this sort of usual press stuff. For this particular one, we declined. The reasoning was that we want to remain as close to a consumer as possible for this particular product line. Up next, friend to GN Louis Rossmann has a new wiki page focusing on consumer advocacy and consumer rights and awareness. We think this is a great idea, what he's doing here. I'll walk you through it. We want you all to be aware of this, and we support what he's doing here. So Louis called me recently to tell me about his increasing focus on consumer protection. This is a direction we've really been leaning the last couple of years as well. There's a lot of work to be done here, but he's taken it a step forward and created wiki.rossmanngroup.com, which aims to offer a repository of, well, we'll just quote him.
And over the past several years, this channel has evolved into the Welcome to Today's Episode of How You're Getting Fucked, I'm Louis Rossmann show.
Louis's intent is to compile and composite tonally neutral articles that could be used to help consumers, particularly those who are less informed, to get up to speed on issues that may suddenly and unexpectedly impact them. Louis makes a point in his announcement video to highlight that a lot of daily consumers who don't follow channels like his or really any of this type of stuff online, those are the types of people who have truly no idea how badly they're getting screwed day to day until it really happens in a considerable fashion, and like losing access to their TV even though it's right in front of them and it just stops working because they need to accept new terms. And he points out that his wiki is for those people, but more specifically, it's for the friends or family of those people. So that is hopefully people like you all in the audience, where he's hoping that the audience can help to maintain this as a repository of systemic corporate issues such as systemic warranty rejection practices, see the Asus Ally issues we talked about earlier this year, systemic issues like Adobe with its end user license agreement that changed with some of its AI processing, or issues with TVs like mentioned where they pop up notices that you have to agree to certain arbitration clauses to continue using your TV you already paid for. And so those are the types of things he's looking to document and compile on this wiki. It's open for anybody to edit. It doesn't require an account. It's going to need a lot of moderation. But he's looking for people who can write with citations and sources and really document with proof. Here's something that company X is, that's sort of a company now. I shouldn't use that letter anymore for an example. Here's something that, there's a lot of letters that are used. Company Epsilon is doing this thing, and it's doing this thing systemically to harm consumers. Document what that is, and when someone's harmed by it, they can get the basics, or hopefully a little before if they're researching something like a big purchase. Now, the hope is that when your friend or family member who never speaks about technology or this type of issue suddenly complains about how they had to deal with some big systemic problem to use their TV, that's when you share this wiki page with them so they can get the quick information on what's going on, what it means, and maybe get involved. Among other things, the wiki also includes quick breakdowns of contractual agreements, and in particular, it notes clauses that may screw you over. Lewis referred to this as capturing the, quote,
enshittification of the rights of ownership.
This might not fix things, but it'll help people be aware of the issues in a massive catalog of them. It's archivable, it's easily accessible, and Lewis also intends to keep the writing professional so that he can present it to senators or lawmakers to push for change. And Lewis has been successful with that in the past for a number of right to repair things, so he's got some experience with it, and he's just looking for people. He said specifically he's not looking for another Yelp. So he's not looking for some ultra-specific problem happen to you with your device and you want to just complain about it. It really is meant to be about systemic issues where it's a company-wide decision. I mean, another great example would be the 14th series and the 13th series of Intel CPUs. What was going on there? The wiki's meant to kind of help recap that stuff. Maybe I'll contribute to that one or something. But anyway, the page is wiki.rossmanngroup.com. Lewis has our full support on this. I plan to call him as soon as I have a moment as well to ask where we might be able to try and contribute to some of the specific issues that he's documenting. And the corporate greed and anti-consumer behavior, genuinely, it's getting worse. The good news is that more people than ever are aware of it and are able to sort of aggressively hold companies accountable. So, but it's whack-a-mole, right? Like, you see an issue pop up and people chase that one down and maybe that's fixed for a little bit and they wait till you look over here to tackle this problem and then it pops back up. And unfortunately, protecting your rights as a consumer is just going to be, it's a never-ending thing. And there's a lot less individual incentive at the end of playing that game of whack-a-mole for that particular mole for an individual consumer than there is for companies to screw over thousands or millions of people because theirs is a profit incentive. But he's doing great work, really interested in it, and we're going to try and contribute something as well. So check it out, and you can find his video links below. All right, up next, AMD says that it's Intel's fault that they have not enough CPUs to sell. While at CES, Tom's Hardware asked AMD about the ongoing shortages for the Ryzen 7 9800X3D. AMD's statement reported by Tom's was as follows. Quote, "We knew we built a great part. We didn't know the competitor had built a horrible one. So the demand has been a little higher than we forecasted," end quote. In regards to when supply is expected to increase, AMD assured Tom's Hardware that, quote, "We have been ramping our manufacturing capacity or the monthly, quarterly output of X3D parts, period, and that's 7,000 as well as 9,000 X3D. The demand we've seen for the 9800X3D and the 7800X3D has been unprecedented." But this aligns with what AMD told us closer to launch back when the 9800X3D first shipped, where what we were told was that they were getting shipments out basically weekly. So not a huge change there in the statements. The biggest change is calling the competitor's part horrible, which, I mean, you know. AMD's executives then went on to describe the manufacturing process of their chips, with Tom's reporting the explanation as, quote, "Building a traditional semiconductor, it's basically 12 to 13 weeks from when you start a wafer to when you get a product out the other end of the machine. The stacking process adds time to that, and so it's longer than a quarter horizon, 3 months they say, to really ramp output of those products. And so we're working very, very hard to catch up with demand. I think as we go through the first half of this year, you'll see us continue to increase the output of X3D. There is no secret, X3D has become a far more important part of our CPU portfolio than I think any of us would have predicted a year ago." AMD noted that the stacking process requires additional time and that ramping to meet demand has a latent effect as a result of this. It's somewhat elastic to the demand in that way. At a separate small table discussion, Tom's Hardware asked Intel about how it plans to respond to its own shortcomings. Intel responded with this, quote, "Our goal is that leadership product in every segment. I'm not going to talk about unannounced products." In other words, Intel has nothing right now, but hopefully they get it together because it can't just be AMD and gaming CPUs. It's not good for anybody. I mean, except AMD, short term. But it's not good for anyone long term. AMD has announced the Ryzen 5 9600 with minimal fanfare. Staying on the AMD topics, this is an actual announcement. So like the 9600X before it, The new CPU is a 6-core, 12-thread part that has an advertised 65-watt TDP. Both processors also have the same amount of cache. The 9600 has a lower 3.8 GHz base clock and 5.2 GHz advertised boost clock, in contrast to the 9600X's 3.9 GHz base and 5.4 GHz boost frequencies. AMD hasn't announced pricing yet. This would put it at the lowest end of the Zen 5 CPUs out today, at least. And currently, the 9600X has a $280 MSRP, but we've seen it around for like $240 recently, so the 9600 would have to at least beat that. Up next, Acer has some new handhelds, and one of them is gigantic. While at CES, Acer announced 2 new handheld gaming devices. They are the Nitro Blaze 8 and the more notable Nitro Blaze 11. Sadly, notably absent is the Nitro Blaze 420. The Nitro Blaze 11 has a huge 10.95-inch display. The biggest item is that there are detachable controllers on the Nitro 11, similar to the Legion Go or the Switch, I guess. It also has a built-in stand. Both of these devices will use the 8840HS SoCs with a 780M IGP, 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X 7500, and 2 terabytes of storage. They'll be Windows devices and are not joining the new family of SteamOS devices, at least not yet. For the screen, both will be touchscreens. Acer says up to 144 Hz refresh rates. However, at this time, the only specific difference in that up to is that the Blaze 11 will run a 120 Hz display rather than 144, at least for one of the listings they have here. We don't know if they have other ones yet. Some other significant differences between the specs of these two devices include the size and the weight and the charger. It's 65 watts versus 100 watt chargers between the two. The controllers also differ, again with the 11 including detachable solutions. The larger Nitro Blaze 11 will weigh significantly more than common handhelds at a weight of 1,050 grams or 2.3 pounds. And there's no hard release date yet, but they're saying that both of these devices will be available in North America at least in Q2. And the Nitro Blaze 8 will start at $900 with the Blaze 11 starting at $1,100. Lenovo up next. Fittingly, at CES 2025, Lenovo announced its own follow-up to the Legion Go handheld. This time around, though, the company is ditching the somewhat famous detachable controllers. So it's a big change. They are announcing 2 different versions. There's the Lenovo Legion Go S and the Lenovo Legion Go S powered by SteamOS. Now, this is a complicated name, so we're going to go with LLGS-PBSOS. It's much better. Now, that handheld is the first officially licensed handheld to use SteamOS, outside of course, the Steam Deck. For its screen, Lenovo says it uses an 8-inch, 16x10, 120Hz pure sight touch display. For its SoC, the company says that there are options for either the Ryzen Z1 Extreme or the newer Ryzen Z2 Go processor, which Lenovo claims is exclusive to their handheld. The Legion Go S can be equipped with up to 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5X 7500. In terms of battery, it'll use a 3-cell 55.5 watt-hour solution, and Lenovo says that the Legion Go S's controllers will have adjustable trigger switches and Hall effect joysticks. The company also says that the handheld will support Wi-Fi 6E, 2 USB 4 ports at the top of the device, and a micro SD card slot. All this will supposedly weigh 1.61 pounds, which, for reference, is roughly 0.2 pounds heavier than the Steam Deck OLED. According to Tom's Hardware, the SteamOS version of the Lenovo Legion Go S will start at $500, with the Windows variant starting at $600. The most expensive version with Windows, the Z2 chip, and 32 gigabytes of memory will cost $730. That memory is a lot of it. Z1 Extreme versions of the Legion Go S will be released later this month, with the Z2 Go variant targeting a May launch. Now again, the biggest change here is in the controller, so we're curious to see how the community reacts to that, because that was such a core part of the existing Legion Go. Maybe they're planning to bring them back, though, for the Z2 Extreme or something like that. All right, up next, Reuters has previously reported that NVIDIA has been allegedly working on a consumer processor, likely with Mediatek. Now, however, it looks like NVIDIA and Mediatek have put out a workstation system to get things started. This has manifested itself by way of the NVIDIA Project Digits computer. The new system, NVIDIA says, includes an energy-efficient processor. They say this has been co-developed by NVIDIA and Mediatek, and it comes with a Blackwell GPU. The official NVIDIA blog post says that Digits includes a GB10 Grace Blackwell so-called super chip, and NVIDIA writes this, quote, GB10 features an NVIDIA Blackwell GPU with latest generation CUDA cores and 5th generation Tensor cores connected via NVLink C2C or chip-to-chip interconnect to a high-performance NVIDIA Grace CPU, which includes 20 power-efficient cores built with the ARM architecture. Mediatek, a market leader, NVIDIA says, in ARM-based SoC designs, collaborated on the design of GB10, contributing to its, they say, best-in-class power efficiency, performance, and connectivity, end quote. Up last, Atari's back. This is always good news when Atari's involved in recent years, depressingly, for those of us who have liked Atari as a brand in the past, having grown bored of possible cash grabs with Atari Hotels, Atari Blockchain X, crypto cash grabs, and the Atari casinos. These are all actual things, by the way. Now, the company is back with the Atari Game Station Go, which might actually be a real handheld device. If you haven't followed it in a while, we'll give you a quick history lesson via mostly Wikipedia information here. Atari has had a sad history for longtime fans of the company. It's been bought and sold many times. Atari Inc. was founded in 1972 and closed in 92, folded into its parent. Atari Games was founded in 1985 and closed in 2003 after being purchased by Midway Games and then shuttered. Atari Corporation was founded in 1984 and went defunct in 1996 after eventually being purchased by Hasbro Interactive and skipping over some middle acquisitions. This leaves Atari Interactive Incorporated, which was founded in 1995 as Hasbro Electronic Entertainment, turned Hasbro Interactive, turned Infogrames Interactive, turned Atari Interactive again. This is currently owned by Atari SA, which is some sort of holding company. The point is, it's not Atari anymore. It's Atari in name only. All of that to say, the company tweeted on January 2nd to state, quote, an icon reimagined, and then tagged My Arcade Retro. My Arcade Retro sells mini gaming devices and mini arcade cabinets, and it also now sells an Atari Game Station Pro. In Atari's tweeted video, we see a handheld gaming device with a retro Atari colorway. It actually does look nice. Has ridges in the plastic that resemble some of the original consoles, a numpad, and modern buttons. This all follows an early reveal of the device in 2024. Time Extension has additional photos from My Arcade, better showing a trackball input below the D-pad, and a paddle input. This is all kind of unique. That's all we have for now. There's a ton more news we're working on covering. We might have multiple hardware news episodes, but at the moment we are also working on closing out our B570 coverage and a bunch of other GPU tests. So we'll keep you all posted on hardware news. And as always, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.